Hi there, it's Sherry Kaler. I've got another yoga prop talk for you today. You might guess that I'm going to be talking about yoga blocks today. Before I get deeply into that, take a moment if you find these videos helpful, entertaining, like the video, take a moment, really subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it when I release. I put out these yoga prop talks where I look at the tools and the practice of yoga, and you get to benefit from my over now 20 years experience of teaching adults yoga, particularly adaptive yoga, for most of my practice of teaching. Since I myself, in my practice of nearly 25 years, my practice has mostly been adaptive to meet my own chronic health illness needs. so, uh, yeah, thanks for joining me, and thanks for joining the channel if you've clicked that subscribe button. Videos are things like yoga props. I do practice videos, guided meditations, all kinds of things. But today, let's talk about yoga blocks or bricks, right? You'll hear them called. And these get used in a yoga practice in a variety of ways, literally to prop up the body. In many poses, there you'll see them, particularly if they're on the cover of a magazine. You'll see very often very conventionally thin, attractive people by Western standards doing poses with their hands on the floor. Right? For many of us, our hands aren't going to get to the floor without us moving in a way that wouldn't feel good to our body or potentially be safe for our body. So we bring the floor up to us by putting a brick there between us and the floor. So you might see poses like triangle pose, Trikonasana, a side angle, right? A half moon, which I'm going to be showing half moon in a moment, which is why I got the mat set up behind me with a variety of things. And other ways people will use these, if you're seated on the floor, right? Especially if you're seated right in that kind of cross-legged, propping up the knees. These are great tools to prop up the knees. Poses on the floor, usually again, like a back bend, like fish pose. You can do that back bend with your center of the back going over a brick, right? So you end up in a supported back bend that you can kind of hang out in for a little bit longer. Um, you can also just sit right on these, right? Often when I would be teaching at the end, particularly if I was teaching like restorative classes, all of the blankets and things would get used up. And at the end, usually there would be at least one block left that I could use to then be my seat while I would lead a guided meditation at the end of those classes. So they're pretty versatile. There's lots of reasons, particularly if you have a practice where you're down on the floor, there might be a lot of reasons you would like to have a block. What are some different types? So you notice these ones I have here. The more common ones you've probably seen are a foam. These are made of cork. They're solid cork. Cork can be a renewable resource, so these are sometimes seen as a little more environmentally friendly than the foam blocks. One of the things I like about them, they're a little heavier, right? So particularly if I'm putting my hand on this to support myself and I'm in a balancing pose, something that's not too squishy or wobbly feels a little more supportive. But let's look at a few other, what I like to call purpose-built yoga props, right? Here's a foam one. You can tell this one, right? These cork ones are a little smaller than the average foam one, but this foam one is considerably bigger than that cork one. This is sold as an extra large yoga block. Remember, I was talking about that supported fish, that back bend. This larger block can feel really nice for things like that. If you're sitting on it, right, it can be good. I often use this block too when I was working in person with folks who lived in much larger bodies, very tall people, much larger people in fat bodies. Sometimes a bigger block just felt better, right, if for bigger people. Another kind of block that's a little sturdier, I've got a whole set of things over here to my side, right? This block, speaking of very sturdy and not going anywhere, I got this over like 22 years ago when I first started practicing yoga. For doing a half moon and other balancing poses because it is a 5-pound solid rosewood block. So when it is on the floor, it's not going to go anywhere, particularly if it's on a yoga mat. So if I was doing a pose where I'm balancing and my hand was going on it, there's no wobble at all. It's very hard to wobble this solid wood block. So I don't use it as much because it is very heavy. And my hands actually have a harder time picking up this heavier block. You can see me using both hands to hold on to it, but it's definitely an option. It can be a really beautiful option too. Now, one more purpose-built for yoga block I want to show you. These are fun. These are definitely these are like a special order. Many of these are a special order thing too. You're not going to find like the cork blocks and that at a at a large market. Here, like even the large kind of supermarket centers will have a sports section where you sometimes will find foam yoga blocks. These are called a 3-minute egg. I got these at a yoga therapy conference. I really like these when I'm sitting down and I'm doing this because there's no hard edges, right? It feels really nice to the support. I also sometimes use these intentionally, like sitting on them and having that rocking, right? Where I'm having to stabilize and steady against the rocking of this. Similarly, lying down, putting it behind the back of my head, right? Just rocking. These definitely can be used, right, for support, putting the hand down to the floor. They're not going to be as solid, they're going to move. So they can offer that length, but they then offer some challenge at the same time. This company also makes some that are huge. They're bolster size. Eventually, I'll be doing a video about yoga bolsters, and I'll show the 3-minute egg version of those. They are right. They are like this. They're really big. But yeah, kind of some fun varieties of purpose-built yoga blocks. If you are thinking, I've already decided I want to get yoga blocks, I'm overwhelmed by the types, right? You might just prioritize. Maybe that environmentally conscious is an important part of yours. I showed that solid rosewood one. I've seen also ones that are made of hollow blocks of bamboo, right? Which is a much more sustainable source, and they're much lighter weight than the 5 pounds of rosewood. But maybe by now you're thinking, yeah, I get why a yoga block would be helpful, but I don't have the space for another thing in my home environment where I live. I don't have the energy or time to find and procure yoga blocks. I don't have the money. I don't want to have the add the expense of buying more yoga props. So what could I use around the house? The first one, I've been on it the whole time. So a lot of those hands down poses, when you come to my Yoga for Vitality class, which is chair assisted rather than yoga in a chair, we often will be using a hand down on this chair to support ourselves in standing balancing poses, right? No block needed. The chair is a little higher for reaching down to as well, offers a little more support. What else you might use, you definitely have around the house. You have water bottles, right? I have 2 sizes here. This one definitely is a little, right? If you're reaching down way down to the floor, that tall liter water bottle is great. But even this little shorty, right? If you're doing that hand down to the floor support, particularly, water bottle can be great. Another thing, that's why I stood up to get it closer, a hardback book, right? You can put your hand down on that. I'm going to show these off in just a second so you can see them. But I want to show the few more of these close up. One more that you might not have thought of, but you definitely have around your house, boxes. This happens to be a completely matched pair of the same box. And you can see I have this taped end to end, both sides. And let me show you what I've done. You probably also have in conjunction with those boxes that stuff arrive in. So those boxes are packed full of packing peanuts that have come in with other things, right? And then once, this one is not completely full because I didn't want it to spill out when I opened it up, but I would keep adding these in here until closing it was actually like squishy, and I had to really push down to get it closed. I'm losing those packing peanuts. And then I would tape it up, which is what, come back to these where that's already been done, right? These are packed full of those packing peanuts. Now, these would support just about any of the things I described. Even for brief periods, you could sit on one of these for a little bit of time. They are going to start to compress because it is just packing peanuts, but your boxes from around the house, if you've had stuff delivered, small ones might be like a yoga block right there, ready to use. So let's look at some of these here. Right? So I mentioned half moon. Right? Half moon. Another big prop you can use in place for these balancing poses is to do them right against the wall. Right? Again, no block needed because I am leaning my back body to the wall. The wall is holding me up. But say I wanted to progress to actually balancing on one leg, right? Here's the chair as instead of yoga block, right? Up and into that pose safely. It's why we use the chair a lot in Yoga for Vitality. But let's look at a few of those other things. So I'm going to grab one of the purpose-built yoga blocks. When they're lightweight, what I often would tell people to do for half moon particularly, right, is just have the block in the hand and then come down to the floor because it's going to land where you need it to land. Right? Purpose-built yoga block, but you can see that same approach works. Hardback book. Liter water bottle. Right? Same approach. Short water bottle. And this works because I'm flexible enough to get that far to the floor, right? So that one, depending on how that pose works for you, that liter water bottle might be better. Cardboard box, same approach, right? I could also do that, right? Make that one lower. Same thing. Now, let's look at seated, right? So I'm going to go into hero pose here. That is indeed the cardboard box behind me. Little bit of compression, not a lot of compression. It is not the most comfortable seat, but in a pinch, seated on a box. Now, that block is going to be a lot more comfortable, so I'm going to put that there, but show. Now, if I'm going to do knees on a block, because I'm going to sit like this, right? These will work fine, but particularly if you're at home, right? Here, use a towel, use a pillow. That might feel nicer, but you can see these cardboard boxes I have filled up are working exactly like a yoga block would. All kinds of things you could use, including something right out of your recycling bin. If you do not want to go to the time, expense, and then the space to store more yoga props in your home, maybe look at how you would want to use, in this case, a yoga block, and what you might use in place of that yoga block before you decide, oh yes, no, I really do want one. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of yoga blocks. If this was a fun or helpful, again, take a moment, please like and subscribe. Take a moment if you're like, oh, you know what I use at home, Sherry, for this purpose. Let me know. I would love to hear what other things people are using at home in place of purpose-built yoga props. There's so many things we have around our home that we can use to support our practice being safer and more fun without feeling like we have to pay money to practice. Thanks so much for joining me. Peace, peace, peace.